Good morning, everyone. My name is Marina Angelaki, and together with Pavla Araudo and Timea Crofoni, we would like to welcome you on this Gender Action webinar focusing on gender equality plans. It's actually the third of a series of webinars that we have organized over the past 2 months, and it is actually the last one. So thank you very much for participating and for your interest in our webinars. Before we start, I would like to share with you some practical information regarding the webinar. We would like to ask you to mute yourselves as the webinar is being recorded. So this will help us to have a better quality. If you have any questions for the trainers, you can use the chat function that you can find on the bottom of your screen. And we will address these questions at the end of the webinar as we have a dedicated Q&A session. We have some useful background reading and references that are included in this presentation. We will be sharing the links in the chat during the webinar. But you don't have to worry, as all these links are included in the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we will also share with you a feedback form that we would like to kindly ask you to fill in, as this provides much helpful feedback on the work that we do. So now focusing on the structure of today's webinar, we will start with a short introduction about the Gender Action project. And then I will give the floor to my colleagues, Timea and Pavla, that they will present the novelties of Horizon Europe in comparison to Horizon 2020. And then we will focus on the gender equality plans, starting with an introduction, and then focusing on the areas of change and the requirements, how to plan a gender equality plan. Then we will have a short break. And then during the second part, we will present some examples of gender equality plans and some good practices. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we will end this webinar with a Q&A session where you will be able to ask any questions and discuss with the trainers and gender experts. So moving to the Gender Action project that is organizing this series of webinars, Gender Action is a Horizon 2020 project that started in 2017 and will end this September. Its aim was to create an innovative policy community that brings together representatives appointed by the national authorities, both of member states and associate countries, that are members of the former Helsinki group. Now it's called the Standing Working Group on Gender in Research and Innovation. With the aim to advance the gender equality in research and innovation and the implementation of the gender priority, it's priority 4 of the European research area at both the national, the European, and also the international level. And doing so to allow the exchange of experiences and best practices, and enhance mutual learning among more and less experienced countries. To do so, the project has developed a number of activities. First of all, we have analyzed the member states' progress towards the implementation of the ERA Priority 4 that relates to gender equality. And we have done so by analyzing the member states' action plans and strategies. We have delivered a number of trainings of different types, such as, for example, webinars like the one that we're organizing today, but also mutual learning events. And in doing so, we have targeted different stakeholders, not only national contact points, but also policymakers at the national level, representatives from research funding and research performing organizations. Obviously, we have worked a lot with members of the Standing Working Group on Gender in Research and Innovation, but also we have managed to collaborate with bodies focusing on international cooperation. We have also prepared a number of position papers and policy briefs that tackle various aspects of gender equality in research and innovation. The policy papers and the position papers, you can find them on our project website, and they have also been translated in a number of languages such as Greek, Polish. Obviously, they're written in English. So we encourage you to look at them and share them with your colleagues and also with other stakeholders in your countries. And through these activities, we have managed to build also new collaborations for advancing gender equality, also at the international level. So moving to the impact of the work that we have done, we have developed a methodology for measuring progress regarding the implementation of Priority 4 that focuses on gender equality and gender mainstreaming. We have also provided consistent and professional capacity to implement, again, Priority 4. And we have also enhanced the expertise of a variety of key stakeholders that work for advancing gender equality. And we believe that we have in this way shifted the imbalance between the proactive and the relatively inactive countries in Europe. So once again, we would encourage you to go through our website. The webinars that we have organized over the past month are also available on our website, along with the policy briefs, the position papers, and other materials. So now I will give the floor to my colleagues Pavla and Timea.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you for the introduction. And I will now take over and present the first part of this webinar, which will be roughly 50 minutes long. Then we will have a little break, and then Timea will take over. If you have any questions, again, you can first, during my talking, you can ask in the chat box. Timea will try to answer. Then the other way around after Timea takes over. And at the end, we will have at least 30 minutes to discuss your questions and concerns or something that might be unclear after this presentation. So first, I would like to start describing what are the novelties of Horizon Europe regarding gender. In comparison with Horizon 2020, of course. So first thing is that European Commission decided to put a little more accent on intersectionality, which means that there is broader understanding of discrimination, and intersectionality talks about different levels or different social categories that play a role in possible discrimination apart from gender. Then there is a default requirement, which is integration of gender dimension in the research content and innovation content. And it is the award criteria or award criterion of new project proposals submitted to Horizon Europe calls. And it means that before, in Horizon 2020, you were supposed to describe how you integrated gender analysis. Now, meaning that it's a requirement by default, you will always have to integrate gender analysis or gender dimension into your research content and If you don't, you will have to explicitly explain why you didn't, or why is the gender dimension not relevant to your research. Also, there might be some calls that will ahead say, we don't need the gender dimension explanation here in this call, so you don't have to explain why you didn't or did integrate it, but those will be specific calls and it will be described beforehand. Other calls will have to have this included. Second, novelty, and this is why we are here today, is that public institutions will have to have gender equality plans while applying for funding from Horizon Europe. So we call this eligibility criterion, and if you don't have the plan yet, don't worry, there will be some time to design it and implement it before European Commission will be kind of checking it if you have it as an institution, but it will become an eligibility criterion. Another difference or novelty is that there will be specific funding provided to create inclusive gender equality plans, specific funding for gender studies and intersectional research. European Innovation Council will be now targeting women-led companies and women among, or like gender balance in advisory structures and members of advisory structures and expert groups. There will also be a new prize for women or female innovators and some initiatives to support women-led startups. And last but not least, there will be a new ranking criterion, which is taking into account gender balance in research teams and evaluation panels and boards and expert groups. But this criterion says that if you in your research project are evaluated by a certain amount of points and another project has the same amount of points, then the evaluators will look into the research teams and into gender balance in the research teams, and will probably pick the project that has better balance there. So again, just to sum it up, there are 4 levels in which gender now comes into play under Horizon Europe. And as I said, it's the first, you are supposed to have the gender equality plan as an institution while applying for funding from Horizon Europe. Then in the excellence part of your project proposal, you will have to take into account the gender dimension by default. That's award criteria. And then the ranking one is the gender balance of research teams. And the fourth level that European Commission described is that as an institution or beneficiary of Horizon Europe funding, you must also take all measures to promote equal opportunities between men and women in implementing the action. And it's supposed to be where it's applicable with in line with gender equality plan. So it goes beyond the gender equality plan per se. So what is gender equality plan actually? Gender equality plan is a holistic plan tailored by and for an institution, and it contains certain objectives, measures and activities to reach them, indicators to measure change, targets. It has to have certain timelines, so when the activities has to take place and when the objectives are to be reached, and also division of responsibilities between people or among people in the institution who will be designing and implementing the plan. The plan is always unique or should be unique because there are different institutions of different sizes, different social and legal context of the country and of the society that the institution lives in. And it is supposed to be a new document and it has to, in certain ways, take into account intersectionality. So it has to go beyond, or it should go beyond just the division between men and women. So why a plan? Why European Commission is now asking institutions to have their plan? In some countries, it's very common. In France or in Spain and other countries, we can see that it is required already by national bodies. So it is kind of common in some countries, or in Western Europe, let's say, it is common to have such plan. And it's compulsory in some countries. And European Commission now wants to kind of make all the institutions similar in this way. They want to balance it. It's not just for having the plans in some countries and in some not, because it makes or creates certain disbalance. So they would like to see the plans everywhere across Europe. And it is considered to be a tool of sustainable change towards a fairer and better working environment and conditions in academia and research institutions. And it brings inclusive environment for everybody, or it should bring if it's well done. In some programs such as Horizon Europe now, it's a requirement for funding, and it will be much more prominent in other national funding programs, even in Czech Republic, where me and Timea are from. It brings also, as it is designed, it should bring certain transparency into processes within institutions, and it should enhance quality of management and human resources work. And it, in certain ways, because of this transparency, prevents what we call inbreeding, so people staying in the same institution. And it also prevents harassment, because that's one of the thematic parts of the plans is systematic work with measures against harassment. And according to some statistics, it was proven that there is a correlation with excellent research and innovative potentials of institutions and countries that where the plans are common. So when you have plan as an institution, or where plans are required or compulsory, the excellency of research and innovative potential is higher in those countries and those institutions. As I said, there are certain thematic areas of work that were recommended by European Commission for the plan. They are not compulsory, but they are strongly recommended. And these areas are work-life balance and organizational culture, which you will focus on in your measures and activities and changes within the plan. Then there is gender balance in leadership and decision-making. Third is gender equality in recruitment and career progression. Then there is integration of gender dimension into research and teaching content. And last but not least, as I said, measures against gender-based violence, including sexual harassment. So these are the topical or thematic areas of work for the plans and within the plans. Also, European Commission set certain minimum process-related requirements. We call them building blocks, which mean that these are conditions for you to fulfill when you want your plan to be accepted as a valid plan by the European Commission. And it is that the document has to be publicly available. There were certain questions about in which language and how. It is not specified, and it doesn't have to be in English necessarily. However, if you have in your institutions people from abroad and working language is English, for some at least, it should be also provided in English, so all people from your institution where the plan is implemented would understand it. There also have to be dedicated resources for the plan, so not only people, but also time and some financial resources for the plan. So beforehand, before you even start implementing the plan, you have to have these thought through and prepared. Also, one of the necessary parts of the plan or required parts of the plan are kind of continuous data collection and monitoring. And it means that you would be collecting gender segregated data and monitor progress of the plan, monitor and then evaluate. And fourth part or fourth building block is that you have to plan kind of creating your own inner capacities regarding gender equality in the institution, and you have to implement some trainings that will enable people from your institution to understand the problematics of gender equalities or inequalities and other problematics connected to your plan, such as gender dimension of research, such as sexual harassment, etc. So inner capacity building is one of the process-related requirements or minimum requirements of the plan. So these are kind of very broadly given requirements, and then we will have a look how you can go in depth into those four. The plans usually have, or the plan usually has its specific cycle. We don't see that it would be required for a certain amount of time, but usually the cycle lasts 4 to 5 years. And it starts with gender audit, in other words, analysis, where you analyze the current state of your institution regarding gender equality and discrimination. And based on that, you would design your plan or kind of specify the activities and the measures and the goals you want to go towards. Then you implement your plan, which is also another long part of the cycle, where you actually train people in your institution when you take measures, where you change certain documents, certain policies, certain processes, and then you evaluate if your plan had actually had any impact, if it made any changes in your institution, if it was successful or less successful. And on basis of that evaluation, you can start actually kind of drafting new plan, or you will do another audit about the state, the current state, and you draft a new plan. So it can be kind of never-ending cycle that goes around and around. But what we usually from the experience, these changes or changes regarding gender equality in institutions take quite a long time. So it's at least 4-year long cycle. The conditions for success are that there is a certain knowledge of institution and its context when you draft the plan. So we strongly advise you to do the gender audit or gender analysis from within the institution. You can usually use support of other people outside of institution or institutions or NGOs or some private companies that focus on gender audit. But what we strongly recommend is that you include as many people in the institution already in the gender analysis or gender audit process, because the people have the knowledge of the institution and its context, and they have access to the data that you need for the analysis to not only quantitative data, not only statistics on how many men and women, etc. you have, but they also know people, they know their opinions, and the gender analysis or gender audit should have not only quantitative part, but also qualitative part, which means that you might need to do interviews or focus groups with people from the institution and ask them what they see as problematic, where they see inequalities, what is bothering them, how they could balance better their work life and private life, if they feel that they have access to decision making, if they are well managed, or if as managers they have good conditions for managing their team, etc., etc. So if you want to be successful already in your analysis and then creating the plan, you have to know your institutions well. in order to be able to help them well or change them well. Also, very big condition or very important condition for success of the plan is that you have the support and commitment of top management, which means if you as one officer in your institution decide to create and implement plan, it will be probably impossible or unsuccessful, because if you don't have support from the top management, from CEOs, etc., you can do many changes, and you would probably meet very big resistance if you were the only person wanting to change anything in your institution. So it is good to, before you even start any analysis, etc., to talk to the management of your institution and bring them very relevant reasons or support for gender equality plan, how it is important, why it is important, what could the changes bring to everybody, and not just women, because what we also experience that there is very often resistance even from women themselves to, I don't want any changes just based on, or I don't want any promotion or any advantages just based on my gender, and that's valid reason. So you have to see behind that, and you have to see that gender equality plans can bring better conditions for everybody. They can bring a much more excellent research per se, because let's say diverse team have better results, and results much more relevant for the whole population in terms of products of research or in science. So this reasoning has to be accepted by the top management, and you have to have their commitment. Also, we recommend to establish, especially in bigger institutions, we recommend to establish some gender equality officer position or even unit, where you would have a team of people dedicated to this work, and not only gender equality plan, but any issues that might then arise maybe from the plan or from just life in the institution, that those people could take care of. And as we said, building some internal expertise is actually a requirement within the plan. So by that, you actually build and maintain your internal expertise. You also might need to think about the good strategy for the communication of your plan. You have to negotiate certain things and raise awareness even before the plan is designed and implemented, because, as I said, resistances might arise and they might hinder the implementation of the plan. You also need time for preparation on audit. In my experience, from what I've seen in some institutions across Europe, it might take up to a year to make a good audit and gender analysis, because some information might be not available to you from your position of, let's say, gender officer or a person responsible for the plan. And in some institutions, it's really difficult to get to certain type of information. So in order to collect really valid data and really good data, you might need some longer period of time. What we also experience is that actually drafting the plan and the measures and activities within the plan, it's good to use the participatory approach. In other words, to use opinions of as many people as you can from the institution. And if you work with all different people from your institution, then you know that their wishes, what their wishes are, and that the plan can actually help their real life problem or their everyday problems they face at work. The plan should have clear objectives, targets, and ways to measure, or like indicators to measure the changes, and if you actually reached your objectives and targets. And so you monitor your plan, which means while implementing the plan, you already check if activities are done, etc., etc. So the progress of the plan, and evaluation is either midterm or final evaluation, where you actually see how successful or in fact impactful your plan was. You need financial resources, because you already see from all I said, it's quite a difficult and time-consuming and energy-consuming process. So you need financial resources for the plan, not only for gender audit, but for the activities that you want to implement. And you might need some external expertise, be it taking part in trainings or like webinars like this one, or be it having NGOs and companies from your own country to help you maybe draft the plan or do the analysis. What we also see that it's very useful to check all the processes that are going on in your institution already. Like, for example, if you are working on an HR award project, or any other project that might take into account working conditions of people in your institution, and you kind of see the synergies with those already ongoing activities in your institution, and you implement parts of the gender equality plan in already ongoing processes or processes that are already taking place in your institution. So you somehow make sure that it's sustainable. It's not an extra work, an extra plan, extra audit, but you kind of by small parts use what's there already, and you implement the plan within the existing processes. Also, take into account that once you draft your plan, it doesn't have to be the final version. You can be changing your plan in its one cycle according to your needs and according to developments. There might be, for example, changes in management of your institutions, and some things that were planned will not be supported by new management or the other way around. So be ready to be flexible with your plan and to change it continuously according to the current needs and processes. And as I said, it's necessary to have some strategies to deal with and overcome resistances from people, not only in the top management, but from anyone in the institutions. We experience, at least in our country, that gender equality and issues of gender equality are a sensitive topic, and not everybody is accepting it well. So we always have to reason a lot for how it is important and why to actually even take that into account and work on that. So you might need some strategies for dealing with resistances for your plan. One of the advices that I just gave you was that the communication of the plan is important, and it is important for successful, not only implementation, but even for a successful design of the plan. So consider how you will present the whole topic or the whole plan, topic of gender equality, for example, at your institution. We, for example, from our experience with Czech institutions, sometimes even word gender is triggering for some people. So you might even need to name your plan differently, and you have to think about that in advance and beforehand, before you even start communicating your plan or your intentions to create such plan and implement it. So the communication part from our point of view is crucial, and it's good to include as many people from different positions in the institutions, in your institutions as possible, because the more people know about it, the more open the communication and the discussion about the whole thing is, and it also supports the participatory or co-creational approach that I explained is quite important for success of your plan. we recommend you to think of a clear visual style for your plan, and even maybe like bookmark or a special website at the website or site at the website of your institution that would just contain the plan or information about the plan, and that everybody, when they see some documents or some activities regarding the plan, would already know that it's the plan itself, because it will have some clear visual separation or a clear visual style. And the last tip that we have is that you can, or you should, continuously analyze what was effective and what had impact, and what was not as good to bring up, and what obstacles you encountered. And based on that, you change the activities or the objectives or the plan itself, or even the communication style. As I explained before, the flexibility and possibility of changing the plan is there. So we have some updates on the eligibility criterion from European Commission website. There is a question and answer part of the Gender in Horizon Europe website, where people were actually asking already about some unclear things regarding the plans. And now we know that there will be certain, or there is certain transition period for the institutions that which don't have the plans yet. And some institutions were concerned that they could not apply this year or next year because they don't have the plan, and it takes a long time to draft it, implement it, etc. So now we know that there is transition period for this year and for next year, for the calls with deadline in 2020, where you will be able to just state that you are preparing your plan, or you are planning to implement your plan, but you don't have it yet, or that you don't have the plan yet. And there might be, that might be still okay, but after 2020, you will actually have to have the plan in place. And it will be probably retrospectively checked from 2022 on that you actually have it. And the checking mechanism is not clear. It might be just random, that the people from Commission would just check if you actually do have it, maybe on your website or publicly available, but the checking of the plan, or if you have it, is still a little unclear. And they will probably make sure that we will all know how it's checked by 2022. So far, self-declaration of the institution that the institution has a plan is valid now. So if you say you have a plan, it's considered as the requirement for our eligibility criteria done. As I said, if selected for funding, there is also a period until grant agreement signature is done to confirm the JEP is in place. So even for the calls, you still, even if you are, if you get the funding, if you are selected for funding, there is still some time to work on the gender equality plan. And actually, I first said that it has to be alone, like a new alone standing document. It was also discussed with European Commission, and another strategic document can be considered as gender equality plan. However, it has to have the requirements that European Commission gave. So as we said, there have to be some capacity building and some finances or other resources committed to gender equality measures and activities, etc., etc. It is also not only for public bodies, but now we saw that I think even NGOs. It's written here that private companies and NGOs are not required to have them, but I think that's also kind of in discussion right now. I'm not really sure. Timea might have better information than I, that even private companies will have to have such jobs.
If I may just jump in, Pavla, it's not a requirement for private enterprises, but it is like the eligibility criterion for research organizations and higher education institutions, and it doesn't matter if it's the public one or the private one. So it's
okay. So if you are a private enterprise that is not focused on research, you don't have to have it. But if you are focusing on research, you do, from what I understand. Thank you, Timea. I wasn't really sure about that. Gender equality plans, as I said, they don't have to be in English. They can be in your national language. However, all people working in your institution have to understand it and have to have access to it. So it is strongly recommended if you have international employees or employees from abroad to have it in English. And now I was quite quick, so I would invite you to ask some questions now, and then we can take. Right.
We have few questions in chat box, so we might address them right now. Yes. And so we will see. And the first question was from Saxena. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your names wrongly. I really apologize for that. And it was about the slide where conditions for success were mentioned, considering the top management. And wouldn't it basically be sufficient by saying like JEP is a requirement by European Commission as an eligibility criterion? And I think that since the slide was named conditions for success, even though you have gender equality plan, it can be unsuccessful, which means it would be adopted just as fulfilling the criterion, but without any real inner intentions from the institution itself, which means that it would not work as you planned, for example, because it would you as an institutions are not persuaded about the necessity and about the qualitative side of the whole matter. So it would be more just, as I mentioned, just pro forma. But if the top management is really persuaded about it as a moral or ethical value, it would be successful. So this is the difference.
I agree with that. We've experienced one case here in Czech Republic where institution got funding, especially for gender equality plan. And there was a huge resistance from the top management, and they actually got the funding. They started to implement the gender equality plan. And because of the resistance from the top management towards, in general, gender issues and gender equality, which can be the case in some countries or institutions at least, the plan was within the funding period, the 4 years. It was somewhat successful because it was getting, financed, and it had financial support and support from other experts and institutions in Czech Republic and abroad. But once the financing was finished, all the impact vanished in a way. Maybe they kept one activity and everything else was gone. And so it was like 4-year funding for basically almost nothing, because the resistance from the top was so big. that they only saw it, oh yeah, now we have 4-year funding and that's it. And after that, we don't care.
Yeah, so this is basically the difference. And we have another questions from Tamara about gender audit. And she understood that the audit is done internally. However, you can bring external expertise too. This is, yes, this is true. We think that the best way is to have certain group of people in the institution, the inner circle of employees who would carry on the gender audit. And for example, you can work with gender or sex segregated data with statistics and so on. And it's necessary to have certain knowledge of the institutional culture. So this is the part of the inner side. And the external expertise is very helpful, for example, for the qualitative part of gender audit. And I put right now in the chat box the information about gender audit from European Institution of Gender Equality, where you can read more about it into depth. And the external expertise, you can use it for either leading the focus groups, for designing the questionnaires with open-ended answers and so on. Because sometimes you really need some sociological background or background from gender studies to really be able to design the questions in a way that would not cause any other bias or stereotypes. And it's necessary, of course, to cooperate between this inner circle of employees who have the knowledge of the whole institutional structure and so on, and cooperation with this external experts to explain them how it works there, and to help them with getting in touch with the employees or students. And so you can add something if you want, and if I didn't answer to your question fully, and we will have another time to discuss more issues in the last part of our session today. But there is a third question. Should all the recommended areas be mentioned in the gender equality plan even though no actions has started yet about them? So
I answered this already a little. I think it's just recommended areas. It's not compulsory. So if you kind of already have a plan, or you drafted some actions, or you have some measures and activities in place, which you will then present as gender equality plan, and you don't include some of the areas, it's okay. This is recommended. And it's recommended because European Commission believes it brings, it's very important, to take them into account. So maybe you don't have to take them into account in your current plan or the plan you are now drafting, but maybe consider them for the next cycle of the plan, because they are important.
And there is a second part of the questions. In case of the gender equality plan would be finalized before the grant agreement signature, but not at the time of the application, should we already answer yes to the gender equality plan question in the application form? You certainly need to answer correctly and truthfully, which means that you have to, when you are submitting your proposal and you don't have the gender equality plan yet in place, you have to answer no, but, sorry?
I already responded to that question in chat box, and I agree with you, Timea, but if you are already working on it, and if you are drafting it, you have to respond no?
you have to respond no, and it's not a problem for the evaluation. But once you are awarded with the funding, there will be, again, before the grant agreement signature, you have to update your information and click on yes. But for monitoring and evaluation process, European Commission really needs to know whether it already fulfilled the requirements, those building blocks, which would mean signature from the legal representative, already uploaded on the website, and so on, which would not be true when you are just drafting it in the moment. So first click no, and then click yes once it's done.
So I'm sorry for incorrect answer to that question then, because I said that I believe you can do that if you are already working on the plan, but okay. So. And
there is another question from Aneta. Regarding the audit, is there any institution which has shared its own audit, for instance, the questionnaire for its employees? It could be nice for inspiration. Well, I think that, for example, from institutions, every institution is different, but of course they are certain templates for the questionnaires. And for example, I would recommend you to, I will upload it into chat box. It's called Gender Equality Audit and Monitoring Tool, GEM tool, which was created for the European Project Act on Gender. And you can contact the representatives of the projects for dissemination. There are already different versions of national languages provided. And also, we are now discussing about providing the Czech version in Czech Republic. So this might be interesting for you. So there are certain templates of the questionnaires. And Tamara asked whether the audit can be done without external experts. I think that, of course, it can be, especially if you have certain, for example, if you are in a university and you have, for example, faculty of sociology, and you have experts there which who are targeted or focused on gender studies or sociology, they could really help you with the whole process.
It usually is a combination because it is time consuming, and usually you don't have people who could dedicate full-time work for some months or half a year on that, which sometimes is required for good audit. And that's why some institutions actually, or mostly, combine the internal and external auditing way, but you can definitely do it with your internal resources. That's no problem. And you can also do it with the external ones only, but it's recommended really not to, because those audits usually are not as good and as valid as when you have someone from your institution taking part in that as well.
And I will react to one question. What if none of the recommended areas are covered? That would probably cause you that you are not eligible, because it would not be considered as gender equality plan. And there is certain unclearance, I would say, in the propositions of European Commission, and it is now discussed because general annexes and also the template of the questionnaire for the participants just provide one section where is written, do you have gender equality plan fulfilling the building blocks and covering recommended areas? But there is, so from the logic of the whole thing, it would be understood that they say recommended, but actually it is kind of compulsory, since you have to just fill the one question, yes or no. So right now, I would because this is not covered in frequently asked questions by European Commission. So I would suggest you to contact European Commission directly on this email address and to put your question there. We already tried as an NCPs for Czech Republic, but we didn't receive the answer yet. And as European Commission is preparing certain pilot program for explanation gender equality plans more into deeper level, I think that there will be options to address these questions, whether it's enough, since it's just recommended, whether it's enough just to cover 2 of the areas or how many exactly. But I would be lying if I would tell you that we already know 100% how many of areas of the recommended ones you have to cover. So,
and at the same time, I can't really imagine a gender equality plan that doesn't actually, tackle at least one of those thematic areas. So probably if you have some, gender equality plan or HR award work, then at least some of the areas are tackled by default. So I believe so.
Well, what I mean is, if I reply no, then we are not eligible. It is not like that. You are eligible. You will be eligible for funding. You are eligible even with no at the time for the proposal, even if you click no for evaluation, but you won't be eligible for funding. So
basically your project proposal will be evaluated, will be given points, etc., as if, regardless of having or not having the plan, then you would be maybe selected for funding, which doesn't mean you would get the funding yet. But at that point, you would actually have to prove that you have the plan when getting the grant agreement done, etc. So applying, yes, but then in the next stages, you already have to have the plan. That's the idea of the transition period.
Yeah. Okay, so now we have 11 a.m. I suggest to have a break until 11:11, and then we will continue with the second part with the examples of actions, and then we will have another time for discussion and your questions. So see you here in 10 minutes. Thank you. Today. And we have 11:11. So welcome again. Hello, after our break. And this part of today's webinar would be focused on providing you certain examples and certain good practice of actions which were adopted by certain institutions as an inspiration for your work, and what kind of measures and actions can be taken to promote gender equality in organizations, and what can be done or set and designed in each of gender equality plan, because every equality plan would be different regarding the size and type of institution, and also kind of background of your own country. So when we speak about the area of work-life balance and organizational culture, the first thing which came to mind is, of course, certain measures for parents and other people with caring responsibilities, for example, about sick partner or old parents or whatever. From University of Warwick in UK, they have certain specific funding to support their employees who care for children or others to attend conferences, because of course conferences is a necessary part of the academic career, and so they can use those funds for babysitting or other caring persons to be able to travel with them or to visit a certain conference. In Germany, University of Constance has very wide range of support and internal policy regarding the caring responsibilities of both of their employees and students. They provide childcare services. They have also kindergarten and playroom for short-term babysitting at the building of the university. And they also partially fund the babysitting for staff and students to babysit at their homes. And so part of the salary of babysitter is paid by university, and part of it is paid by staff or students. And they regularly offer babysitting at the events organized by the university to allow everyone to really participate in the life of the university, which is very important for not just networking, but really for the career or student's life. University of South Denmark, they offer continuous academic updates for people on parental leave to be in touch with their academic field. And when they are returning from parental leave, regardless it's a woman or man, they offer a teaching-free period to really be able to focus on their academic publishing, their research, and so on. And people are much more quicker back on track with their careers without any like bad influence of parental break. About the organizational culture and symbolic order, by which we mean certain culture of the institutions. Institutions decided to adopt compulsory awareness raising and gender sensitivity trainings, which means that they are actively seeking and removing stereotypes through capacity building. And they also adopt gender-sensitive communication guidelines, because once you use just the gender non-sensitive communication, you somehow support the stereotypes about certain positions, about certain academic fields, and so on. It's also connected, this gender-sensitive language, connected to the balance of visual representation. So in gender equality plan, you can, for example, set a rule that all the visual representation would represent or will represent the diversity of the institutions, and in all PR materials, both women and men of different ages or ethnicities will be represented. Also, as we already mentioned, it's very important to have explicit support from the management of the institution for gender equality, and it can be done for example, by certain meetings where the top management would promote the case of gender equality, inclusion, and diversity. And what really helps, and even though it's not compulsory yet by European Commission, but it's compulsory by national law in certain countries, as for example in Austria. In Austria since 1995, as for my information, every university has to have equal opportunity teams. And they are responsible for dealing with gender equality issues and other issues about diversity. And this position or unit with specific responsibility regarding gender equality problematics is kind of crucial for sustainability and success of gender equality plan. But of course, we understand that not everyone or every institution has enough financial resources for composing the whole new unit, but it can be mentioned, for example, in gender equality plan. Then in future 4 years, the institution will try to find the funding actively to set up this position. Gender balance in decision making and leadership, it's one of the priorities of European Commission, of European research area, because of course from the research we know that women are crucially lacking from the top positions, and what can be done, right? Because sometimes there is this argument that women don't want to participate in the decision making, and we don't have enough women at our institution, or we don't have enough women in certain fields. But what worked was adopting specific trainings for women or men if they are underrepresented in the particular organization, to support their leadership skills through mentoring and coaching. They can also be specific funding for women, allowing them to be freed from teaching and to focus intensively on research and publication, which would mean to get to a higher academic rank and then to fulfill the requirements for the leading position, for example. Sorry, I I touched something. Also, another measure is to set targets or quotas for the proportion of women in leadership or decision-making positions, which sometimes cause huge resistance. We know that, for example, in Czech Republic, the quotas are something like no-go zone in our institutions. But as we know from foreign countries, it really works. For example, in Ghent University, they adopted the rule that the highest body of their university, so-called Board of Governors, needs to reach 40 to 60 gender balance representation of men and women, and faculties are required to have at least one male and one female candidate. And once they reached this balance, it somehow broke the glass ceiling, and once women were already there, other female candidates were more prone to be seen as leaders and so on. So this might be one of the provisions. Gender equality in recruitment and career progression. Pavla already mentioned the problem of so-called inbreeding and open position advertising certainly helps. Also, gender-sensitive language describing the position, possibly this affirmative formula, women are welcome, or men are welcome when it's them who are underrepresented parts. You can also actively find and reach out to possible female candidates or men if they are underrepresented. In certain universities, they have this special working group or working unit for actively searching for best candidates. And also, they have, certain universities have the rule of possible gender balance among candidates selected for interviews. Like for every level or every circle of interviewing, there needs to be at least one female and one male candidate. In the University of Copenhagen, that's the case. At least one applicant of either sex before a vacant position can be filled, and there also needs to be at least one person of each sex in all appointment and review committees, because also research shows that when at least one woman is at the committee or certain panel which decides about the candidate, women tend to apply for the position, and also by this provision you fight with gender stereotypes and implicit bias. In Hungarian Academy of Sciences, they try to also ease up career progression for employees with kids. And if there is any age limit to be awarded by certain scholarship, fellowship, or grant, they extend to 2 years the age limit for researchers who have children under the age of 10. When we speak about the integration of the gender dimension into research and teaching content, and of course, gender dimension, the integration of gender dimension is a compulsory for all the projects of Horizon Europe, and it's also one of the areas recommended by the Commission. So what kind of actions you can take in your institutions in the gender equality plan. Of course, first, people need to be educated in gender problematics, what gender means, what is gender dimension, how we can adopt it for our research, and so on. So they might be even voluntary or compulsory trainings and a workshop for researchers and students. And for example, there is this network of universities which provide guidelines for mainstreaming gender in university teaching. And for example, University of Santiago de Compostela in Spain, they set up a prize for the best integration of the gender perspective into research and teaching, which means that they made the problematics visible. Another area to be covered is adopting measures against gender-based violence, including sexual harassment. And it's, of course, important to explain the whole problematics comprehensively and explicitly, and to have official internal policy for dealing with the accidents or cases of gender-based violence. And everybody needs to become familiar with the provisions and to become sensitive to potential forms of gender-based violence, which means that the different forms needs to be explained. And you can do tailor-made compulsory training and workshops again. You can have special position for reporting and support. You can have certain PR materials disseminated through the institution, as, for example, guidelines of Sciences Po in France have. And on the slide and the presentation, as we already mentioned, will be provided to you with all the sources. So you can go through the pages to look for the inspiration, what else can be done. For example, at William and Mary University in US, they have regulations or certain procedure also for so-called bystanders. So it means for witnesses of the harmful actions, and they have the obligation to report what they saw and so on. And they also work not only with the victim but also with the perpetrator, and they are trying to really explain all the problematics in, I would say, participatory approach. If you need certain examples of the plan, how it looks like at different institutions, you can visit pages of European projects which were targeted on creating gender equality plans, as is Supera project, Gearing Roles, or Equalist. Also, European Institution of Gender Equality also shared, or they collected a number of examples. And this is just an excerpt from Gender Equality Plan of University of Minster, which was created during the Equalist project. And as you can see, they, based on gender analysis or based on gender audit, they indicated certain areas which needs to be addressed. For example, lack of awareness about the topic of gender equality and interest in it. They set up an objective, of course, to raise the awareness where it's lacking, and they suggested certain actions how it will be done. And in every challenge, you have the same system of certain objectives and actions adopted. And right now I will stop share my screen of presentation, and I will show you another example of gender equality plan. This is, hopefully you can see it well. This is Gender Equality Plan of Central European University, created during Supera project. And as you can see, these are the areas which have the priority, and according to each area, there are actions defined and also timetable defined for the change. And for example, considering the leadership and decision making, they find out that the gender composition was the worst in 2019, and they had only 20 elected Senate, female Senate members. So the objective was to achieve gender balance in CUE leadership, and they identified the actions which would aim to fulfill the objective and when it will be done. And of course, every action, this is a very brief summary in the official gender equality plan, but in the inner version, of course, they decided about the budget needed for the actions. They decided about who will have the responsibility for carrying out the action, and so on. So this is one of the examples, and it covers other areas as gender in recruitment, retention, and career progression, and so on. And now, as we reached 11:30, we would like to give you enough time to ask questions, to discuss what is your situation, if you are the person who will need to somehow draft the gender equality plan, or you are more just as an advisor, or what would you like to talk about. So please don't be shy, and we really can discuss it right now, and we have time till midday. I don't know if there were any questions in the chat box. No,
there were none so far in this part. Time, you were
okay, okay. And of course, if you don't have questions about this part, about the examples, we can go back to Pavla's part about the updates of eligibility criterion and all the technical issues about it, and we will try to answer them correctly.
And feel free to start your cameras, your microphones. This is a discussion part, so.
Because this is also an opportunity for kind of network